Hi, it's Ken Whitehouse here from Hart, Honda Australia Roadcraft Training. In our previous series of videos, we've been looking at various physical techniques and some mental thinking styles that can keep us really low risk when we're on the road. Today we're going to put those theories and concepts into practice because we're going to do a commentary ride out in the nice traffic around our training centre here. What we're specifically going to look at is active observation technique. As motorcyclists, we need to get really good at seeing things nice and early. We're going to look as far ahead as we can at a minimum of 5 seconds ahead, because if we can see a potential problem while it's still 5 seconds away, we've got plenty of time to do something about it. We're going to be checking out to our sides to see if there's any danger coming from those areas. We're also going to be checking behind us in our mirrors. In addition to that, anytime we move into traffic, out of traffic, change lanes, change positions, we're going to do a head check just to make sure. In addition to that, we're going to look at using space as our friend. We need space out in front of us so that if something goes wrong, we've always got time to stop in the distance we can see to be clear. That's our crash avoidance space. We're going to have a look at using that. Space out to our sides, we call our buffer zones. If anything's getting close to us, use our lane, move around in our lane. We're going to also think about how we can minimize reaction time. Reaction time for a human being is about 1.5 seconds. If we can minimize that reaction time, it goes a long way to keeping ourselves safe. The way we do that as a motorcyclist is to anticipate a potential hazard and we set up our brakes. Remember, setting up the brakes is taking out the little bit of free play in both levers, front and rear. If something happens then, all we do is progressively squeeze. So if we see a potential hazard and we think, what if that pulled out on me? If I set my brakes up now and it moves just a whisker, I'm now progressively squeezing right from that point. That's around about 1.5 seconds that I've saved. Let's have a look at this in practice now. Okay, we're off on our commentary ride. We're coming out of our driveway at our training facility and we're going to turn left onto a pretty busy road here. So I'm just checking my mirrors. I'm coming to a stop and stopped at the stop sign, having a good look. Now for a motorcyclist, a really good observation technique is one of our first lines of defence. We need to really see what potential hazards are around and respond to them nice and early. There's a fairly fast road here, so I need to get up to speed fairly quickly. And straight away I'm into the observation technique. I'm looking as far ahead as I can, checking my speed, checking the mirrors, and I've got plenty of space in front of me. All good. What a beautiful afternoon for a ride. Once again, looking right out front. I get into a little bit of a pattern of looking as far ahead as I can, scanning back to the bike, have a quick look in my mirrors to see what's going on behind, check the instruments, make sure I'm not going too fast, and then back up ahead again. Now I can see that there's a speed change coming up from 90 down to 60, so I just need to start to slow down a little, get out wide so I can see through that corner as far ahead as I can, checking my mirrors, and I've just got down to that correct speed now. So I saw a car off to the right there at the intersection waiting to come across. Some parked cars up on the left, not too much of a hazard. And I'm positioning myself in my lane. I'm just going to move across to the left because they've got a car coming up. I'm just going to pass on the right. Set of traffic lights, I'm beginning to slow down, checking my mirrors, just so that I can make sure everybody else has realised we're stopping as well. When I stop, I'm going to stop with about 1 to 2 car lengths between me and the car in front, just in case I needed to get away quickly. I've got some space. Off we go again, bit of a head check, make sure we're right, and away we go. Now there's nothing on my left hand side, so I'm going to move over to the left hand side of my lane so that I've got plenty of room between me and anybody coming up on the inside. There's one now. The space out in front of a rider is so important. So at the moment, I've got about a 3-second gap, and I can gauge that by when that little white car in front of me goes past the stationary object. Okay, that sign, 1001, 1002, 1003. So I've got a nice gap there. If anything went wrong in front, I'd have plenty of room to be able to stop. Look up there, there's a flashing light, school zone, 40 kilometres an hour. I need to set that nice and early, start to slow down, vehicle on my left. Set up my brakes as I go by, just in case he pulled out. Down to 40 kilometres an hour, I had cars on both sides of me there, so I'm splitting the difference by being in the centre of my lane. And a traffic light. Slowly to a stop. Once again, leaving about 1 to 2 car lengths between me and the vehicle in front. Checking my mirrors to make sure the people behind are actually stopping. And sitting in my ready position. I've got my rear brake on, I've got my front brake off, and I'm keeping my head up for balance. And just keeping that observation as we're waiting to move off. Lights gone green. Head check to make sure it's safe. Moving off. Car on the left there. Fairly unlikely that he'd pull out, but just keep an eye on him. It's fairly heavy traffic, so I've got vehicles on both sides of me now. So I'm just splitting the difference, and I'm keeping at least half a lane of buffer zone on either side, just to maximise that space. Now you notice there's still plenty of room in front of me, and nobody seems to be ducking into that spot. It seems to be that a lot of riders feel that if you leave a 3-second gap in front of you, the whole world pulls into that space, but guess what? They don't. And again, I'm looking up front, checking my mirrors to see what's going on behind, out to the sides, checking my speed. So this is right in about peak hour for this at this time of day, so there is a lot of traffic on the road, but with a little bit of road sense and some roadcraft, I'm not really feeling in any danger at all, because I'm managing the space around me, particularly that space in front. Again, can't emphasise enough, always have enough space to stop in that distance you can see to be clear, and that should be, in good conditions, a minimum of a 3-second gap. Remember, you gauge that gap when a vehicle in front goes past a stationary object. 1001, 1002, 1003. Traffic's a bit of a crawl just at the moment, and I'm just moving up to keep up with the traffic again. Now we've got a postie going down in between the vehicles there, and that's an interesting thing. Lane splitting in this state has become legal. But I think I'm prepared just to sit in the traffic at the moment, because I don't think I'd get very much further anyway. So I can see, looking as far ahead as I can, I'm looking right up to the next set of lights up there, and I can see that traffic's all the way. On the left here, there's a car. Now, he could have pulled out on me, so I just set up my brakes as we went by. But of course, he did the right thing and stayed there, which is always nice. See a little red car pulling in out of a driveway. Looking at the lights up there, there's some more traffic. Once again, stopped with a nice gap between me and the vehicle in front, just in case something went wrong from behind. I'd be able to move out of the way before it became a problem. Remember sitting in the ready position. We're stopped at a set of lights at the moment. I have my rear brake on, I've got my front brake off, and just my head up for balance. Now, in that position, if for the very unlikely, in the event of something bumping into me from behind, if I'm sitting with my rear brake on, I can be pushed along and I can still steer. If I was sitting with my front brake on and something hit me from behind, it would probably lock up the front wheel and tuck underneath me and I'd fall off. So that ready position is a really important one for scooterists. Traffic moving, head check, off we go. Just a nice slow riding technique at the moment, so a bit of power, a bit of rear brake for stability, and we're speeding up a little as we go through this intersection. I'm just going to set up my brakes. Unlikely that somebody would pull out on me, but we do have red light cameras for a reason. Using my observation again, looking up ahead, checking my mirrors, watching out for what's out to the sides of me. I'm pretty much using the centre of my lane at the moment. Sometimes people say, oh, I don't want to ride down the centre of the lane because that's where all the oil is. Well, in these modern times, the cars and trucks seem to be so good that very rarely do I find much oil or anything else down the centre of the lane, apart from perhaps at a heavily used traffic light, and particularly when it's just started sprinkling or raining. But apart from that, I don't find the centre of the lane too much of a problem at all. Well, I've got vehicles on the left and the right that have a potential to pull out, so I definitely set up as I went through there. Cars on the right, parked cars on the left. A little bit of something on the road there, so I don't know what it is. I'm just going to set up as I go by, just in case. And we're starting to open up a little bit now. Car on the right, cars on the left, set up my brakes, split the difference in buffering. Car on the left that may pull in, so once again, setting up as I go by, just keeping an eye on that driver. Nice good gap out in front. If that car in front suddenly had a problem and stopped urgently, I'd have plenty of time to stop. And once again, I don't find that anybody's particularly pulling in on me, so I find it nice and relaxing, even in peak hour traffic. As long as I've got space around me, that's a nice relaxed ride. As I'm stopping, just have a look in those mirrors. Always want to make sure as we're stopping that the vehicles behind have also realised we're all slowing down here. If anybody's interested, this is sunny St Ives that we're riding through at the moment. A pretty busy part of town. Head check and off we go. Car on the intersection on the left, set up as I go by. Every now and again I've got to think about my posture as well. Good posture is so important for riding a scooter. So I'm thinking about having my feet nice and forward. I'm keeping my knees pointing straight, and I'm just clenching my thighs, so I've got a little bit of tension, and that's where I lock myself into the scooter. My upper body needs to be nice and relaxed. My elbows are bent, my wrists a bit below my knuckles. I've got no tension in my back, and I'm keeping my head up and looking where I want the scooter to go. Once again, observation technique, looking out ahead at least 5 seconds, scan back to the bike, checking my mirrors, back to the instruments. So, let's think about our corner theory for a little while. Through corners, we want to start out wide, we want to buffer in the middle, we want to finish in tight, unless we need to change that plan, i.e. the car coming up on the side here. I'm just going to move away a little bit. That's buffering. I've got a car up on the left here and one on the right. Either of those had the potential to pull out, so I just set up the brakes. Now I've got a car fairly close on my tail. It's not diabolically close, but it's fairly close. Now the worst thing would be if I had to brake really hard, he'd probably not stop in time. But I'm not feeling too bad about that because I've got plenty of room out to the front. White car on the left, set up for him. Now if the car behind me was really upsetting me and I thought he was too close, you know what I'd do? I'd just put on my blinker, I'd pull over in the next lane and say, there you go buddy, have a nice day. I just happen to want to go left anyway here. Another bike rider gives us a wave. How are you mate? And we're going to turn left up onto the Pacific Highway. Blinker on nice and early, do a head check, over into the left lane. Oh, look at that, we've got a green light, that's lucky. Nice and smooth. Now let's have a good look. Pedestrian crossing, no one coming. Look back over my shoulder, indicate in, another head check over, and we're on our new road. Once again, observation, look ahead, check your mirrors. See what's going on. Plenty of room up ahead. We've got a little bit of road work going on the left here. So I'm just going to stay buffered over to the right hand side of the lane. No stopping work zone. And some traffic that's stopped in the right hand lane. So I'm just going to carefully buffer to the left. And pulling up to a stop. And leaving about 1 to 2 car lengths between me and that vehicle in front. Head check. And move off. This is another very busy road during peak hour. And once again, it doesn't feel overly stressful because I'm really working on managing the space in front of me. Over there, intersection on the left, so I've just set up to go past those cars. Plenty of room in front of me. You'll notice that as our speed varies, the gap in front of us varies. So we work on a 3-second gap, and as you speed up, that gap gets bigger. As you slow down, it gets closer. So if I count the gap now, 1001, 1002, 1003. So at this low speed, the gap in front of me is really quite small. Red light coming up, check my mirrors, make sure all mate behind me can stop. and at a car length. Just going to move up a little bit further now. So I'm looking ahead there. I can see there's a lot of pedestrians going across that busy intersection there. We're just waiting at the red light. Check behind, lots of traffic there. Even in heavy traffic like this, if you're using your roadcraft principles really well, your risk is very low. Just as I go past this intersection, I'm just going to set up the brakes. And I can hear a motorcycle, or is that, I don't know. It's a car with a big exhaust. Another school zone coming up, a little patch of wetness on the ground there. I don't know what that was from, but it doesn't create a problem. School zone, 40 kilometres an hour. Car on the left with the tail light on. I'm going to set up as I go past him, because you never know. If there's a tail light on, there is a possibility there's somebody in it that might take off. Car up on the left that has its blinkers on. Actually, it's hazards. Oh, it's a learner car. Using observation, look out in front, in the mirrors, out to the sides. Again, plenty of gap in front. And I still don't think, even in this peak hour traffic, we've been now riding for about 15 minutes or so, I suppose. I don't think I've had one car jump into the gap in front of me. That's just a nice, calm way to ride, even in heavy peak hour like it is at the moment. Managing space for motorcycles is just so important. So I've just had a car pull into that gap there. Now, because I've got plenty of space, I've just rolled off just ever so slightly, increased my gap a little bit. It hasn't affected my travel time whatsoever, and everything's nice and calm. Intersection on the left, some cars pulling in, and a red light a little further up. Getting prepared for these things nice and early makes everything nice and calm. It also allows people around you to be really aware of what you're doing. So if you can slow down nice and gently, it doesn't scare anybody. Just having a look around at the whole riding environment. It really is our first line of defence. Good, active observation. Off we go again, quick look in the mirrors, do a head check. Intersection on the left, unlikely that he'd pull out, but hey, if you get into a good habit of setting up, if something ever does pull out on you and your head's set up, well, you've got the best chance of responding really quickly with a minimum of reaction time. Some cars on the right and some parked cars, just splitting the difference in my lane. Now the parked cars are gone, so I'm just going to move over to the left hand side, so I'm buffering away from that car on my right. I can see a little car on the left, one coming up the side here, moving in, setting up my brakes as I go past this intersection. I'm checking the road surfaces as well. We've just gone over, there was a bit of a manhole or something on the road there, another one up here. So if I can, I'll avoid running over those ones, as long as I don't compromise my safety by moving too close to something else. Those big road plates, the big metal plates they put on the road when they're doing road work, you need to be very careful of those. They're very slippery when they're wet. So I've got another car on the right there and a truck on the left. No potential hazard, or no problem, just setting up as we go by. Again, I'm just buffered to the left a little, away from this blue car. I'm going to move a little bit ahead of that car, just so that they know that we're here. We don't want to sit in a car's blind spot. Always a little ahead or a little bit behind will make it always a bit safer. Car on the right, setting up as I go by, and a plumber's van or something on the left with his hazards on. And again, there's a potential there's somebody in the car, so I just set up as I go by. It's very much a habit now for me. This little bit of a talk that I'm doing as we're riding, it's also a very powerful technique. We call it a commentary ride. School zone coming up, slowing down a little bit. A commentary ride is basically where you talk to yourself about the things that you see. It's a really good way to start to identify potential hazards. It means that your mind's on the job of what you're doing, and you generally pick up a lot more things when you're talking to yourself. Try and do it in a full face helmet, otherwise you look a bit weird. But who cares? Coming to a stop here. Check my mirrors, make sure people have realised we're stopping, and stop with some decent space in case I needed to move off. I'm stopped in my ready position, rear brake on, front brake off, and head up. Just having a look around. And moving off, mirrors head check, away we go. And through another intersection, we've got some cars waiting to turn left, some cars waiting to pull in, so I'm going to set up and buffer as I go by. Into another busy area. Bit of a high street for shops here. We've got some parked cars on the left, some more traffic on the right, and plenty of room in front. Car on the left at the intersection, I'm going to set up as I go by there. Some pedestrians, a car door opens up, so I buffed away. The truck on my right, so I'm splitting the difference with the buffer. In through a curve here, basic corner technique, enter wide, buffer in the middle, finish over tight, another school zone. Slowing down to make sure we're not doing any more than 40. The car on the left here, I'm not sure he's sure what he wants to do, so I'm just going to slow down a little, and he's got his left hand indicator on. That's fine. Two cars, one on the right, one on the left, and it's a taxi. No, that's fine. Another bit of a bump in the road. Looking for these nice and early. Another one coming. To go over this sort of thing, we want to just relax. Get some weight down through your feet and let the bike take its own head as you go over. Relaxing is so important on your scooter. You've got to have good posture. Remember, feet flat and well forward, tension in your thighs, nice and relaxed arms and hands, nice relaxed back, and keep your head up for balance. I can look down at my instruments now without even moving my head. So I'm keeping my head up, which keeps my inner ear fluid nice and level, which is how we keep our balance. And I can look down to the instruments without even tilting my head. Checking in my mirrors. Light to green, we're about to take off again. Mirrors and head check, and moving off. Just a nice slow speed moving technique to move off. Fast idle, ease the rear brake. Once we're up and going, release the brake altogether. When we're riding along and we're not using our levers at all, just have your hands away from the brake levers and have them just lightly resting around the handrest. We're only going to reach out when we're actually planning to use the brakes. And when we do, remember, 4 fingers, and use the part of your fingers that got the fingerprints on them. Now I've got a car really close on my tail at the moment, which is alright because he's just moved to the left and gone around me. Now he needs to pull in fairly quickly, but it was okay. I saw it all happening, responded to it nice and early. That potential hazard didn't become a risk. Another bump in the road there. That's nice and smooth. Over we go. Intersection on the left. Set up the brakes. Checking the mirrors. Plenty of space around. It's all a nice, relaxed, leisurely ride, even in fairly heavy peak hour traffic. Set of traffic lights up there. Pedestrians, parked cars, other traffic. Lots of things going on around me. I'm just managing it by using my principle of roadcraft. Remember, observation, slow down if you need to, set up your brakes, and make a buffer zone. Nice big sign up there telling me about some sort of oversized and dangerous something or other. Western Distributor, Night Works. Just our observation technique takes in basically all the things that we need for safe riding. So some more signs up there. Just directional signs about going to the city or North Ryde. We're going to turn left on Boundary Street to go towards Frenchs Forest and back to our Hart side. So nice head check, looking over before we change lanes. And gently rolling off, coming to a stop where we're going to turn left. Once again, check those mirrors and make sure that whoever's behind us has actually recognised we're stopping. Coming to a stop at a set of lights like that, I'm using both front and rear brakes. But I've just got to make sure that my bike's upright, my handlebars are straight, keep my head up for balance. Once I've come to a complete stop, I'm sitting in my ready position. I've got my rear brake on, I've got my front brake off, and I've got my head up for balance. So I'm going to turn left here at this intersection. It's a fairly tight left-hand turn, so I'm going to use some slow speed riding technique to get around here. It'll just be slow, I'm going to have some power, and I'm going to use a little bit of rear brake just to control the speed, and I'm going to look where I want the scooter to go. Mirrors and head check, away we go. Just getting a little bit of rear brake on to control my speed as I go around here. Look right through the curve where I want to go to. And now make sure I turn that blinker off. That's such an important thing. If we ride down the road with our blinker still on, people don't know what's going on and they may pull out in front of you. Intersection on the left, setting up as I go by. Check those mirrors because there's another red light. Slowly rolling to a stop. Just using those front brakes. Bike upright, handlebar straight. Stopping with about a car's space between me and the vehicle in front. Once again, check those mirrors just to make sure that truck behind me knows that we've stopped and he's going to stop in plenty of time. Mirrors and head check, and off we go. Look at the road surface now, it's pretty bumpy over here, a whole lot of potholes and things, so I can just pick my route to go through them, make them as smooth as possible. And remember, don't compromise your safety by putting yourself close to anything else while you do that. As long as it's safe, you can move around the potholes. Car coming up on my right, so I'm just going to buffer over the left-hand side of my lane, so there's plenty of room between me and him. I'm keeping a good eye on the driveways as I go up here. The last thing I'd want is somebody to poke their nose out of the driveway. There's an intersection and a car's just pulled out. That's fine, plenty of room. There's another one following him. Just set up my brakes just in case he hadn't seen me pulled out, but he was fine. And we want to turn left at the next intersection. So blinker on, nice big head check, look over to make sure nothing's in my blind spot. And coming to that stop, checking my mirror again to make sure people are stopping behind me. Mirrors, head check, off we go. Checking the intersections as I go by. Check my mirrors. Looking as far ahead as I can. Going to be turning left at this next intersection, so indicator on, let people know. About 30 metres before you turn, you want to put that indicator on. And it's just, again, a slow speed technique through that curve there. A little bit of power, a little bit of rear brake. Check your mirrors and off we go. Another school zone. Slowing down to 40. Making buffer zone as a car is coming up on my right there. Again, at this stage I'm really checking those driveways as I come up to them and make sure nobody's going to be pulling out. Intersection on the right, and there's a car at an intersection on the left, so I set up my brakes as I go by, just in case. Seems to be a car with its hazards on, so we need to merge into the next lane to get around that one. I've put on my indicator nice and early. Person knows I want to move in, they've slowed down to let me in, and now I can move back into that lane. Of course, head check before I go. And we've got a speed limit of 60 down here. Car on the right, just a bit of a setup there. I'm also just controlling my speed with the brakes as I come down, so I don't want to go too fast. Looking up to the crest of the hill there, checking my mirrors. There's a car sitting in a side street, so we're seeing these potential hazards as early as we can, because if we can see it early, we've got plenty of time to do something about it. So we've just set up our brakes and buffered around that one, and a red light, just slowing down. Just using those front and rear brakes. The front brake being the most powerful brake, remember, and that's due to the weight transfer. So if we really need to stop quickly, the technique we'd use would be check your mirrors, roll off your throttle, set up the front brake and progressively start to squeeze. Joining with a little bit of rear brake, keeping your head up for balance, and then stopping in your ready position. Bit of a blind intersection here, I'm just going to buffer over a little bit. That's all good. Over the crest of a hill, I don't know what's over there, so I'm just going to move over to the left a little until I can see. So I'm always repositioning my bike in my lane so I can maximise space around me. Moving around in your lane or creating buffer zones is a really, really good thing for bike riders to do. It does three main things for us. The first one it does is just put space between us and any potential hazard. The second thing that it does is it creates movement. And drivers aren't always the best at observing things. When we create movement, peripheral vision of another road user may be enough for them to pick out that we're on the road. So that's good for other drivers' awareness as well. And the third thing it does is that if we're actively moving ourselves around in our lane, that means that we're actively thinking about riding. So our mind's on the job, which is always an important thing as a rider. I'm just checking my speed here, it's only 60. And observe, look, plenty ahead of us, out to the sides, checking my mirrors. Again, we've got that a nice gap in front of us. Let's just check our gap as that car goes past some sort of object. We're going to start to count. We want to have at least a 3-second gap. So a little sign coming up here. We'll go 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. So I've got a 4-second gap, and still I don't have lots of people pulling in front of me. And boy, it's relaxing when you've got plenty of space around you. So that car's just pulled in front, but of course you're going a fair bit faster than me, so it hasn't affected my speed at all. Looking all around, active observation. First line of defence for motorcyclists. Get very good at seeing potential hazards and doing something about them. If you've got enough time, most people will come up with an answer if you have enough time. It's when things pop up really close to you that they become a real problem. A few bumps on the road there. Turn my corner, starting out wide for vision, into the middle, and just finishing in slightly tight. Stop at a set of lights, slowing down nice and gently. Now it's a bit glary here, we've got the sun coming down in front of us, so I was really keeping an eye on the car behind me just to make sure that he'd worked out that we're stopping. I've left some good gap between me and the car in front just in case I needed to move off. I've got somewhere to go. Traffic starts to move, check my mirrors, do a head check, and away we go. Going through this intersection, there's cars on both sides. I'm going to set up my brakes just in case. All good, release the setup, keep going. There's a merging lane to the right now. I'll put my indicator on nice and early. I'm having a good look. There's no traffic behind me. I'm going to check, head check, and merge in. And then just recheck my space in front. 1001, 1002, 1003. In wet weather, we can't stop our scooters as quickly as we can in dry weather on a good surface, so if it was raining now, I'd want to increase my gap in front of me to at least 5 seconds. Just in case something happens, you can slow your scooter down without losing control because of the wet surface. Through the curve here, I'm looking through that curve as far as I can. I always want to maintain at least a 5 seconds vision in front of me. Through here, I wanted to start wide, but there's some traffic coming, so I started that corner more in the centre of my lane, and my speed is still sufficient to see 5 seconds through these curves. This right-hander, I'm going to start out wide, looking as far as I can through that curve now. I can see about 4 cars or 5 cars ahead. I also noticed there's a speed camera just on the left there, so a quick check on my speed, all good. Staying well away from that bus on the right hand side, created a buffer, everything's gone, so I can move further over onto the right hand wheel track, which is a nice place to ride. If there's no traffic around, the right hand wheel track puts you close to the centre lane and you get really good vision there, and you've got space on both sides of you. As soon as everything starts coming towards you, it's really good to move across. Like now, I'm just going to buffer over to the left hand side as that car goes by. Now I'm going to reassess. I can go back into the right hand wheel track again. Now the car, I'll just ease myself over, and I've got a car coming off my left hand side in the left lane, so I'm going to just keep myself in about the centre of my lane so I maintain a buffer away from not only him but any cars that might be coming in the oncoming direction like that one. as that sun's going down, it's starting to get a little bit glary. As it gets further down, I can't see as well. I'm just going to slow down a little bit. Got some oncoming vehicles, so I'm going to buffer across to the left-hand side of my lane, checking my mirrors just to make sure there's nobody too close over there. Intersection on the left, and there's a car that wants to pull in, so as I go by, I'm going to set up and buffer as I go by. Maximising my space by buffering to the left hand side of my lane. There's a couple of cars coming up behind, they're maintaining their speed, so they're all good. We've got a school zone I think we've just gone out of the school zone time. Their lights are off. We still want to be careful in case there's any kids straggling around. Now we've got a roundabout here. We're going to go straight through the roundabout, so I don't have to indicate on the way in, but we always indicate on the way out. So indicate on the left for the exit. And roundabouts are really places where motorcyclists need to be very aware. Because even now, roundabouts have been in action for a long time. There still seem to be people that don't quite know how they're supposed to work. So it's a place where motorcyclists have to be extra careful. Once again, a really good active observation technique goes a very long way to keeping motorcyclists to be low risk. What a nice open road this one is. Got plenty of space on both sides of me. Nice good road surface, buffering away from any oncoming vehicles. So even after all these years as an instructor and riding with these techniques, I still find it sometimes a little odd how few cars actually pull into your space when you leave a big gap. I think it's a fear of riders that if they leave a great big gap, that they'll just have 10s or 20s or hundreds of cars pulling into that gap, making them almost go backwards. I think we've just shown that in about the last half an hour in peak hour traffic, I'd be surprised if more than, I don't know, 6 or 7 cars actually moved into the gap in front. And when you've got a good gap, you'll have to adjust your riding position so little anyway. That car's turning left, we're into our roundabout, and indicate to exit. Remembering to have a good look at all directions when you're on the roundabout. Give the scooter rider a nod as they go by. Observation to the front, checking the mirrors. We're going to be turning right at these lights, so letting people know what we're doing. Right hand indicator, check those mirrors to make sure when we're slowing down there's nobody too close behind. Do a head check and pulling in behind this traffic here. Sitting in our ready position. We've got our rear brake on, the front brake off, head up for balance. Car coming in behind now, just checking that they're slowing down nicely, no problems. When we're sitting at the lights here and just to stop traffic waiting, try not to get complacent. Don't get both feet on the ground and hands off your levers. If anything did happen to bump into you, if you don't have that rear brake on, the bike can shoot out underneath and it end up in an almighty embarrassing mess. So just sitting in that ready position, rear brake on, front brake off and head up. When we move off, there's a bit of a false start, mirrors, off we go. And it's just slow traffic, so a little bit of power, a little bit of rear brake to control the speed. Got that indicator on, and it's a big intersection here, so keep a real good eye out for anything untoward. And mirrors, off we go, and make sure I cancel the indicator. Intersection up here, cars just want to pull across, so I've just set up my brakes. Now you might notice, so I set up my brakes, but I'm still actually accelerating. So as I reach out and take out the free play on the brake levers, I don't need to slow down a great deal if I don't want to. In fact, sometimes I'll want to definitely maintain my acceleration. Let's say I was going up a hill and I needed to set up. So I need to be able to apply the setup with the fingerprints and still maintain some throttle control by using my thumb and a little bit of my palm. There's a car at the intersection on the left, so I'm going to set up and buffer as I go by. lights, checking the mirrors, slowing down gently, letting the car behind me have plenty of time, being aware that we're slowing down. Coming to a stop with about 1 to 2 car lengths between me and the vehicle in front. Check that mirror again, make sure everything's good behind, and then sitting in the ready position. Lights have gone green, preparing myself to move off. Mirrors, head check, off we go. There's a car at these intersections here. Now, even though they're at a red light, there's no guarantee that they might not make a mistake and pull out. So even going past cars at red lights, I'm in a habit of setting up my brakes. And it costs me nothing, but it does make me lower risk. Once again, set of lights here, there's some cars, so just gently set up the brakes as we go, release and continue. Checking out front, checking the sides, the mirrors, checking my speed. Again, I'm managing to maintain a nice gap between me and the vehicle in front. If anything were to go wrong up there, I would have plenty of time to stop. I'm doing the speed limit, I don't feel any need to get any closer. You can see a bus up on the left here. He's got his blinkers on, so he's going to be joining the traffic. So just keeping an eye. There might also be some school kids that might have got off there. So having a real good look around for any potential hazards. It's all good. Cars are on the right there, just buffered across a little. Through the curve, looking as far as ahead as I can through the curve. Remember, I want to maintain at least 5 seconds of vision. If you can't see 5 seconds ahead, we slow down. And coming out of the 60 zone into a 90 zone. Turned our head for home now. Have a look in the mirrors, we can speed up to 90 if it's safe. Once again, maintaining that nice good gap. There's a car on the right hand side that wants to turn, so I'm definitely going to set up my brakes here just in case. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1. So we've got a 3.5 second gap between us and that car there at about 90 kilometres an hour. Heart's coming up on the left, so indicator on, do a head check, merge into my other lane, cancel the indicator, looking through that curve, the hard side's coming up, indicator on, give people plenty of time to know what I'm doing, and head check and into our turning bay. Coming to a stop here, I'm going to stop just in a straight line, so I'm not aiming into the oncoming traffic, and now I need to wait for a good gap. That's a fairly fast road that we're going to cross now, so I need to make sure that I've got a really good gap. The definition of a good gap is when I pull out that nobody needs to adjust what they're doing to compensate for me. So if I pulled out and somebody had to either put on their brakes or they had to swerve or do anything to compensate for me, really that gap selection wasn't a good one. So when I move out, nobody really should have to do anything to compensate for my pulling out. So it looks like we've got a good gap coming up now. I'm going to check my mirrors, have a look, and away we go. Cancel that indicator. Sharp turn into our Hart service road. So that was, I don't know, maybe around 30-35 minutes worth of a ride through really quite heavy peak hour traffic. But I think you'll agree that it was actually quite relaxing because we managed a lot of the space around us. I think it was a nice low risk ride because we put our techniques of observation, slow down and buffer into practice. So we're back at the Hart site now, and that was quite a long ride, so well done if you've managed to get through to the end of the video here. But let's have a think about some of the things that we encountered out there. We were in peak hour, we had lots of traffic around us, but by managing our observation technique, seeing things nice and early, managing space around us, particularly crash avoidance space to the front, our buffer zones to the side, and responding to what was going on behind us, I found it quite a relaxing and enjoyable ride, even in that heavy traffic. One of the things that I used strongly in that video was a commentary ride. By talking through what we see, it really helps us identify potential hazards early. When I first got into rider training, I worked heavily with talking to myself as I was riding, and I really found it allowed me to see a lot more things I had been previously. I don't do that anymore. It all happens inside my head now. But for a new rider, you might find using a commentary technique a really powerful tool. Thanks for coming along for the journey. If you need any more tips for riding, come and see us at Hart.